This, ladies and gentlemen, is football.
Hello and welcome back to Total A-Leagues. Great to be with you. I'm Vince Rugari. That's Tommy Orr. We've got a lot of football to discuss this week. It's Unite round, which is exciting and sick. I'm looking forward to being at Allianz Stadium, Tommy, for at least 2 of the 3 days to watch, just get my fill of football, really. It's going to be good. So here today, we're going to go through every team in the competition, except Melbourne City. They got the bye. But everyone else, we're going to rip through and discuss all the big talking points ahead of the weekend. We're also going to touch on the Socceroos as well. But Tommy, let's start with the big one from last week. This one went international, actually. Yeah. Obviously, we've got the Sydney derby on Saturday night, but, you know, big question mark still about the Juan Mata situation at the Wanderers and the fallout from his agent, Fahid Ben Khalfallah, coming out on the A-League Off-Air podcast last week. And what was it? He was disgusted with the treatment. FBK can get very emotive, as we know, but he possibly had a point. And so to update, I guess, the situation, my understanding is Stadge and Juan Mata had a bit of a meeting this week, or last week, discussed the fact that it was Fahid talking, not Juan.
Yep.
And I would imagine they also had a bit of a discussion about where they're going to fit him into this team and how it's going to look. And the interesting one here for me, Tommy, is they're coming off a win. Okay, they had a bit of a break. But then you have this discussion and this controversy about where does he fit in and how does it work.
Yep.
Is Stadge going to change? Does he change? Does that risk appeasing the noise and acknowledging the noise? Or what do you think?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, you know, Stadge was probably obligated to have a meeting because he didn't want it to probably erupt and be a distraction for the other players in the team. And we know sometimes that can happen. You know, if there's a big kind of event that gets a lot of traction in the press, you know, about one of the players not playing or with their agent blowing up, it can be a distraction. But I think having a meeting isn't news really. What they discussed, I'm sure, would probably be a fairly interesting thing to be on the fly on the wall for. But at the same time, I think that, you know, we discussed it in depth last week. I think that the bottom line is to win this game. I think that they're much more likely to get a good result if Juan Mata plays. So I'm hoping that he'll play.
What else do you think they need to adjust from the last time they played, which is only like 4 or 5 weeks ago? The season opener derby, Sydney too good on that occasion.
Yep.
What would you do if you're Stadge to make sure that you learn from that one?
I think that in that game, the Wanderers were really good in transition, but with the ball, they didn't have enough of the ball to really pose a constant threat for the Sydney FC. And the double effect of that was that they were exposed defensively. And I think that that's the big question mark for the Wanderers this season is defensively. I think they've looked pretty frail at times. And the more they have the ball, the less defending they'll have to do. And it kind of goes back to the Mata thing again. I think if he plays in that deep midfield role, they'll probably have more of the ball. And I think that, you know, with Hayden Matthews out the Sydney FC, there's an opportunity there for them to take advantage of that.
Well, let's get on to Sydney FC quickly because, so the other marquee that everyone wants to see in the A-League this season, Douglas Costa, was on the bench for their last game against Macarthur FC. Didn't come on because, you know, they were reduced to 10 men, and I'm assuming Ufuk Talay decided that the game was a little bit too stretched and therefore was a too big a risk to bring him on when he's coming back from this hamstring injury that he's got, but it's been, you know, a week and a bit since then, and he should be 100%.
Yeah.
You expecting him to start here?
I think so, and I think that with Joe Lolly out, you know, I think, you know, hopefully Joe Lolly will be on the bench for this one, but, you know, when both of these players aren't playing, they're not as dangerous in the front third. That's the bottom line, and I'm sure that, you know, they won't want to take any unnecessary risks, but I feel like, you know, the fact that he was in the squad the last game and as you mentioned, didn't get onto the pitch, I think that he'll be ready for this one, and maybe Joe Lolly will come on around the 60th minute for him because managing his load going forward will be important, I think, if they want him to be available for as many rounds as he can, which is going to be important for them going forward in this season. That's
probably, I guess, the risk of, if you're Sydney FC, relying on or signing to you know, veteran wingers, so to speak, big names in Costa and Lolly, both, you know, dealing with hamstring injuries. For that position in particular, it's a bit difficult, isn't it? You've got to be really careful with how you manage it, especially when they got, you know, Asian commitments and all that.
And I think a lot of people underestimate the travel that you need to do in the Asian Champions League. And obviously, both players have played a lot of football in their careers. But, you know, to then obviously, you know, add in all the travel requirements and playing midweek. And I think that the players just aren't used to it. In international football, it's a very unique challenge to have to travel that much. And I think Sydney FC also managing these explosive players' loads, because hamstring injuries are something that we see a lot with, you know, these fast, mobile attacking players. And, you know, if Sydney FC is going to, you know, be there or thereabouts at the end of this season in terms of silverware, those players need to be fit for most of this season.
As you mentioned, Hayden Matthews suspended. Lolly is apparently a 50-50 in terms of whether he'll be involved at all. I would imagine he'll be on the bench as a result of that. And I suppose the question then with Matthews out is centre-back, what do you do? Do you go with Aaron Gerd, an actual centre-back?
Yep.
Or do you do what Uffy's done a couple of times before, which is play Joel King, a left-back there, but a left-back who, I believe in the youth internationals, he played King at centre-back. So not a great solution, but I don't know, he seems to be leaning towards that one for whatever reason.
And I think Joel King's a very experienced player, and I think he'll go with the Joel King option. And I think the way that the Sydney FC defend as well, we saw Hayden Matthews in the last game obviously get a red card because they have to step in a long distance, and it can kind of leave them susceptible. But these aren't the normal roles that centre-backs would always play, and I think it'll actually play into Joel King's hands more than playing a more defensive, with a more defensive mindset as a centre-back. So I think he can expect Joel King to play there.
Yeah. So that's a mad game. That's the centrepiece of Unite Round. I think there's going to be a lot of people watching that game who've come from interstate and experiencing their first Sydney derby. So really excited about that one. The other one, which is for me just as good, on Sunday Arvo 4 p.m, is Macarthur versus Auckland FC. In boxing, they say styles make fights, and I don't know if you watched the most recent boxing.
I did see that.
Yeah, so did I. Let's not talk about it because it wasn't very good. But this one, they match up well because Macarthur, and you're a good person to talk about Macarthur as well, their first ever signing.
Yep.
A Macarthur legend, you might say, or I will say.
Use that term loosely.
Yeah. But an interesting club, Tommy, as you know, like they're volatile, it seems. They have stuff, obviously in the off-season just gone, well-documented issues that we don't need to talk about. A lot of things seem to be happening behind the scenes there, and yet the football department or the team itself seems to be pretty insulated from it.
Yeah.
They've started this season very well, and 2 trophies already as a club in their short history with all that stuff swirling around them sometimes. How do they manage that?
Well, I think that a lot of the criticisms of Macarthur are typically, in terms of the crowds and not getting the number of people at the games and these types of things. But you rarely hear somebody criticise their on-field stuff. And Mile Sajovski has done a fantastic job there to not only keep the players motivated, but also with his recruitment. Because if you look at some of the players they've brought in and the players they've kind of given opportunities in the starting lineup, they've got a great mix of experience and youth kind of breaking through. Jed Drew's had a fantastic start to this season and been a breakout player for them. And I think they're a dark horse kind of for silverware at the end of the season, and they proved in the FFA Cup, obviously, as you just touched on, that they're more than capable. And I like the look of them a lot.
I like their front too as well. Valère Germain, if he played for another club, I feel like we'd hear a lot more about him in terms of being one of the best players in the competition. And then Ariath Piol, if they're going to start playing those two next to each other, which I hope they do, what an interesting combination. Because Piol seems like a kind of player, he could be anything, really.
That's right. He's so mobile and he's willing to run in behind, which, for players more experienced like Jermaine, who probably doesn't have the legs that he had early in his career, it can give him more opportunities to get on the ball. But also Jed Drew, the energy that he has, and also having the likes of Liam Rose and Luke Bratton giving them the ball. That's very important. I think that Luke Bratton was a fantastic signing for them. We all know what a great player he is, but his passing ability can really bring out the best in these types of players, and they've been a real joy to watch. So I'm really looking forward to watching them play on Sunday. So
when we say styles make fights, they lead the league, Macarthur, in expected goals, shots on target, big chances, and goals scored. Now, of course, I reckon 3/4 of those stats, they banked them up against Perth Glory in that game earlier in the season. But they look to be a very good attacking team for the reasons that we've just said. And then we go to Auckland, yet to concede. And they actually lead the league in tackles, passes one in the final third as well. So, like oil and water, just like slap them together. And
I think the dynamics of this game are going to be clear because, with the players we just touched on, Macarthur is going to want to have the ball in this game, and Auckland's probably going to defend and counter-attack with the likes of Gillian, and with their pace. And I think both teams will fancy their chances, and that's why it's such an exciting matchup, this one, because both teams will go into the game thinking that the dynamics of it were going to be suitable for them. And I think that with Auckland, they obviously had 20 or 21 days in between games and international duty. They lost a lot of players to international duty, and they'll just be coming back, with a few days before this game. So it's going to be an interesting week for Auckland and how they prepare for that. But at the same time, they've proven that they're title contenders already this season, and I think that this matchup's mouth-watering.
Their first experience out of New Zealand as well, which is interesting. They've tackled a few firsts quite well, I think, in their first few weeks, but this is a different one, as you say, 3 weeks off, going overseas, really.
Yeah,
for
that's
the
right.
First
First
time.
game in Australia. So.
Yeah, and then all these blokes coming back for international. Is that a good or bad thing for them? Do they want that?
Well, I think that, sometimes you can lose momentum when you stop playing games. So these players going on international duty and getting, international football, I think they'll come back full of confidence. New Zealand obviously got a great result in the international window as well, some great results. So they'll come back, raring to go. But I think that the one big question mark about Auckland is obviously they haven't conceded yet, which is fantastic for them. But the statistic you touched on earlier about not having possession of the ball, when they do concede, what are they going to do? Because you're not going to be able to sit back and counter or wait for the counter attack opportunities. You're going to have to go and try and get the ball, and we haven't seen them had to do that yet. So if MacArthur score first in this game, it'll be interesting to see how Auckland deal with that.
Yeah, no, excited about that game. It's going to be great. So Tommy, let's do the early season survey now. So there's 4 other games. We're going to talk about, as we said, each team, and we're going to go through, I've got 4, you've got 4, an early standout from that team, an area where there's room for improvement for that team, and then the wish list for January for that team, because we also know not too long until the transfer window opens up, so an opportunity to change things, bring things in, sell players, et cetera, just around the corner. So let's start with the first game, which is the graveyard shift, Perth Glory versus Western United, two early season strugglers. You've got Perth, Tommy. Where are you starting with them?
Early standout for Perth is a really tough one. I'm really trying to find something here, but
I was battling
I think, to be honest, I think that, I don't think there's too much to be positive about. But I think the one thing they probably will take confidence from was the clean sheet they got against the Mariners, because they've proven that they can defend for 90 minutes in that game, and they should have taken a lot of confidence for that. Obviously, they had the huge setback, in the Melbourne City 5-0 loss, obviously, after that. But the international window came at a great time for them, so I'm sure they'll be looking to rectify all their problems there.
Lots of room for improvement, I'd imagine.
I mean, where do you even start? I think everyone's talking about defensively how poor they've been, and that's obvious and clear for everyone to see. But I think with the ball, they've been equally as disappointing, because Adam Taggart's had no supply, and also having more of the ball will kind of defend them or shield them from a lot of their defensive frailties. So I think we can expect a lot more from the likes of Brandon O'Neill in midfield in terms of giving them more spells of possession on the ball. So that's something they can definitely improve. And in terms of, in January and their January wish list, I think getting their first win, again, giving the fans something to get behind and something to build upon, because, if I'm a Perth Glory fan watching the game so far, it would be really, really tough, and really struggling to find any positives. So I think once they can get that win and the young players in the team can get a bit of confidence, I think that'll be really important.
I hope they don't have to wait for January for it.
They
might have to go and buy their first win.
That's right. I think, and that's right. And
Glory.
That's right. It might be a December wish list, not a January wish list.
Might be a Christmas present. Who knows? So I got Western United. Also had similar struggles. I think around this, particularly around an early standout. I've gone with Dylan Leonard, who's looked pretty good, I guess, for a 17-year-old centre-back thrown into a team that's done a fair bit of defending, and I'd never heard of him before the start of this season, and he doesn't look out of place, which I guess is a good thing to say about a teenage defender when he's just thrown in there.
That's right, and in a team that's struggling, it's different to step into a team that's doing really well and look good, but to step into a team that's struggling and be put into positions where you're exposed and to put in good shifts like he has been very positive.
Room for improvement for me, it's generally across the board, because I think that Western United are better than what they've shown so far. They're playing beneath themselves a little bit. They've got some good players. Angus Thurgate is a good player who's got levels in him, but the one I've mentioned here is Seb Pasquale, who I suppose we've all been waiting a little bit for this guy.
We've seen glimpses.
We have. I don't want to see glimpses, though, from Seb Pasquale. I want to see him step up and become an excellent A-League player. I know he's got it in him. He's a very talented young player. But how many times have we seen very talented young players just hit the ceiling at that? That's
right. And with him and Thurgate, I think that if both players play to their capacity, that could be one of the strongest midfielders in the league, or the strongest midfield combination. So I completely agree with you.
Totally. And in January, if I'm John Aloisi, I am either signing Lockie Wales, who, as you told us off air earlier, is a free agent, so will be available from January 1, and that makes sense if you're Western United. But if that's not an option, if he goes somewhere else, I'm looking at Sydney FC and the depth they have in wide positions in particular. Go and get Thiago Quintal on loan. Right. Go and get Jayden Kucharski on loan. Tell these guys you will play every week.
Absolutely.
And that's a short-term fix for them. Good for Sydney. Because those guys might be stuck behind the older guys that we mentioned earlier. That's right.
And Garang Kuol, he's another player that I think he should be looking to come back to the A-League. So
100%.
Another one potentially for Western United.
100%. All right, let's go to, the F3 Derby, and you can start with another one of your old teams, Tommy, the Mariners.
Yep. So I think that, early standout has been Docker because he's actually created the most chances so far in the whole league so far this season, and he's at the forefront of everything good that the Mariners do. And I think the one thing that's let him down so far this season has been the Mariners not getting enough players in the box, because every time he puts in a quality ball or puts a through ball through, there seems to be too many defenders and not enough attackers attacking the ball. So I'm sure that's something they would have worked on over the last few weeks, and we've seen in the Asian Champions League, there's probably getting more fruits for his labour in the Asian Champions League than he has so far in the A-League, and I think that he's definitely been a standout. In terms of room for improvement, and it's a really difficult one, but I think the Mariners have really lacked energy so far because, with all the travel commitments they had to do in the Asian Champions League, with not having the deepest of squads, I think that, every game they've looked a little bit off the pace. And if you look at why the Mariners were so good over the last few years leading into this season, it was the intensity that they played with. And they haven't been able to recreate that this season. And I think that getting the likes of Trent Sainsbury and these kind of players back from injury will not only for the added quality, but also for the added legs, that I think they can't get back soon enough.
Well, how about up front as well? So Ryan Edmondson, one of the players of the grand final last season, hasn't really fired a shot this season. And then Alu Kuol, my man, I was so keen to see him develop. Something's obviously not right since he got back from Stuttgart. He's not hitting the levels, but he needs to for not only the Mariners, but I think we all had sort of pegged him to have the potential to go higher than that.
Absolutely. I think it goes back to them, to the players playing flat. And I think that they're playing so much football and doing so much travel, it does take a toll. And they've done that for a number of seasons now. And, it's difficult to maintain, but they're going to have to find a way because it's been a really difficult start to the season for the Mariners. And if they're going to turn it around, they're going to need to start posing more of a goal threat. So I think you're right. And fingers crossed Alu Kuol can find form. And funnily enough, that's actually my January wish list for the Mariners is for Alu Kuol to find form and for them to find a way to score more goals, because if you're not scoring goals, it's almost impossible to win games, obviously.
Very good. All right, I got the Jets. Early standout for me, Eli Adams, a Queenslander.
Yep.
There's quite a few of those who sort of get squeezed out of... there's only one team.
Yeah.
Queensland's actually the second highest state for participation in Australian football.
Really? There you go.
But they've only got one club to sort of funnel those players through. And plenty get squeezed out. A lot go to NPL Victoria.
Yep.
And some go to other A-League teams like Eli Adams. Two excellently taken goals.
Absolutely.
Against MacArthur. They lost some players. Obviously, Stamatolopoulos, their big dog last season.
Big shoes to fill.
Disappointing to lose him, but that means opportunities for other guys. And he seemed to be like
I think he's been
ripe to step up.
He's been their most consistent attacker, I think, so far. And for such a young player and relatively inexperienced player, he's definitely been their bright spark. I agree.
Room for improvement. I haven't seen anything from Wellersole yet.
Yep.
Obviously, need to give him a bit of time because it's hard for foreigners to adjust to the A-League, but when they signed him, it looked like one of those ones that is literally either going to be one of the best players in the league, or we'll talk about him in 5 years' time saying, remember when they signed this guy?
Yeah.
I hope it works out, but I've just not seen enough yet.
Yeah.
This is only his second time playing outside of Brazil as well. His previous one was a stint earlier this year on loan in Liechtenstein.
Yep.
Not sure how similar Australia and Liechtenstein are.
I think that, giving him another month or two, it'll be interesting to see, because often the cultural differences can be the main challenge or the main obstacle, and once players get more acclimatised and more comfortable. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, but I completely agree. I think that the only way is up, really.
Yeah. January wish list, just quality. So any of the guys that Western didn't sign that I mentioned earlier, go for one of them, I reckon.
Yeah.
Okay, on to Brisbane Roar versus Adelaide.
Yep. So Brisbane, I feel like their early standout has been Tom Waddingham. Obviously a goal and assist so far, still only 19. Love the look of him because not only does he make the forward runs and running behind, he's very mobile, but he's always looking to get on the shoulder of the defenders. And I think his positioning for a 19-year-old is very positive. And if you're looking at Brisbane's room for improvement, I think Jay O'Shea. And it's not to say he's been poor, but I think that, if you're looking at Brisbane and how reliant they are on Jay O'Shea, they need to find a way to not be so predictable because, having the likes of Berengay back in the lineup, we've obviously seen him come off the bench a few times. I think that'll be important just to diversify their attacks.
Yeah. January?
And January, I think they need to more defensive experience. We obviously saw Tommy Aldred leave, and I think that there's a bit of a leadership vacuum in the team, and especially defensively. So I think they need to dip into the transfer market in January for a defender.
So Adelaide, for me, the early standout, Dylan Piraeus. I'm not saying he's Nestor Irankunda, but some of the way they've been able to isolate him and use his pace from right back has been Irankunda-esque in terms of just like you stand up.
Yep.
You get excited when you see him with space in front of him, playing the ball in front. It's great to see. There's, nothing too much more exciting in football for my money than a quick player.
And a nightmare to play against. Yeah. You don't want to play against players like that. So he's been a revelation, really.
Room for improvement for me from, I've got two players. Archie Goodwin. I know he's sort of coming back from injury, so a slow pre-season, but big raps on him.
Yep.
He's also wearing the name Goodwin on the back of an Adelaide United shirt, which is unrelated, obviously, but a heavy sort of thing to bear. And then Johnny Yole as well is another one who I've been hearing for a long time. Yep. Lots of promise. Well, this is the season to show it as well. He's had small opportunities. I want to see guys like that take this competition by the scruff of the neck and step up big time.
Yep.
And then January, the wish list will probably just be more resources for the physio department because your old teammate FC Utrecht, Bart Vrens, we saw how important he was in the one game he's played so far. I have a feeling he's going to be critical to their whole season.
Agree.
If they can keep him fit and keep him at centre back, they'll be okay.
That's right. I think you're right. And such a natural leader as well. So, next game.
Wellington, Melbourne Victory. Another sick game, actually.
That's a great game. I think no one's really talking about that one, but that's another. I think that's probably, we talk about the Sydney Derby with that third game and the MacArthur game, but I think that's another one to watch out for this weekend. But my early standout for Wellington would have to be Hideki Ishiga. And I think that it took him a few games to get going, but we saw against the Mariners in the last game, obviously a fantastic goal, but more than the goal, he was a threat the whole game, and that was one of the standout performances of the whole season so far from any player. So I'm really excited to watch him, continue to grow into this league, and hopefully we'll still see the best of him yet to come. So he's definitely been my standout. In terms of room for improvement, I think that Wellington need to find a way to get more possession in the front third because we've seen how kind of dangerous they are in the counter-attack with the likes of Ishiga and Costa Barbarouses. But, we saw against Auckland when the Auckland defended so deep, they really struggled to break them down and to really have a creative spark. So I think that finding that creative spark in the front third is something they need to work on. And for January wish list, which kind of ties into that, I think they need another striking option for Costa Barbarouses because Costa Barbarouses is a fantastic player, but he's not a natural number 9. And if they need a goal, they need to bring on someone with a point of difference and maybe a bit more presence in the box. So I think that's on my January wish list for Wellington.
He's also getting on a bit, so you just need some insurance, I think, just in case something goes wrong.
And we saw last game he went off, with a niggle, and that would have been concerning for them.
Yeah. So for Victory, early standout for me is Rene Piscopo.
Yeah.
Probably maybe he's burning a little bit that he didn't get picked for the Socceroos. Probably, as we mentioned, a little bit early for him, but if he keeps it up, he will be there soon enough. He's added an exciting new element to the way Victory attack.
Yep.
But again, a player we've seen flashes of it from. I hope this just isn't a flash. I hope this is the start of a really consistent season from him, which could rocket him to even bigger heights.
Yep.
Room for improvement is the bloke he took the spot from, really, which is Daniel Arzani. Still a good player, still, I think, high ceiling, can contribute to the Socceroos. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes there with, obviously, Kisnorbo not seeing enough from him. I just hope Daniel responds and gives enough and gets back into the starting team because he is at his best.
Might have a chance this weekend with Valupale out.
That's true. That's
good point to start from.
But at his best, for me, still one of the best A-League players.
Definitely.
In the competition. No one more creative than him, really. And then January, I got nothing really because they already got something coming in, which is Mitch Langerak.
That's right.
What an addition.
Oh, to get a player of his calibre back, Melbourne Victory legend as well. I'm excited to watch him play again in the A-League.
I'm excited to have him home as well, and what an amazing farewell he got from his club in Japan a few weeks ago. And in an alternate world, he'd still be playing for the Socceroos, but
that's
he's
right.
not. But let's shift quickly to the Socceroos, Tommy. We are recording this on a Tuesday, so we can't talk about, obviously, the Wednesday morning match between the Socceroos and Bahrain. We tried to find a time machine. We couldn't source one, maybe next international window. But very quickly, Tommy, on the Saudi game, 0-0 in Melbourne, I was there. What did you think of it?
No, I thought that, we probably had the better of the chances, but overall you left feeling, fortunate to leave with a draw. Obviously, the way that the Saudi goal got disallowed at the end. So I think a lot of people underestimate how difficult it is to play Saudi Arabia. They're one of Asia's strongest teams, but draw might have been a frustrating result, but I feel like it's left us in a pretty good position. So
we just need to start winning. So hopefully we do that. Decent shifts from the A-League players in there, I thought. Jason Guerrier.
Solid.
How is he not in this team many, many years ago?
That's right.
Brandon Borello probably should have scored.
And I think Borrello, I think that he did the unselfish thing, but ultimately it was a miraculous bit of defending from the Saudi player to stop that goal. But I thought Caceres and Borrello were both very positive, and Velupile actually. I thought they all contributed and made a big difference when they came on. So I think they definitely didn't do their chances for Socceroos selection going forward any harm in that game.
You mentioned Nish and his injury. We don't know how bad it is, and we'll find out, I guess, if he's involved at all. Probably not on the weekend. There is potential. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned with Arzani, at least they got depth and players to call on.
That's right. I mean, you never want to see a player injured, and obviously somebody who's at the peak of their powers and seem to be getting better each week. But if there's one club that is equipped to handle it, it's Melbourne Victory. And obviously Bruno Fornaroli, we touched on him last week as well. But maybe we'll see him back into the squad.
All right, Tommy, extra time. Let's jump in. Let's rip through it. Starting with, there will be vintage shirts on sale at Unite Round. I'm looking forward to wasting. I hope my wife isn't listening to this. Wasting all my money on shirts I don't need. I need from you your best ever Australian football kit and your best ever world football kit.
I was tempted with the Spew kit from Australia perspective, but I do love the 2006 World Cup Socceroos kit. Just so simple, timeless, minimalist, and the nostalgia for that kit, I love it. In terms of international, I love the old Ajax kits. And, we're talking 30, 40 years ago. And this week just gone, they changed their logo back to the traditional logo from back then. And I'm hoping to see a bit of a vintage kit in the next few years to match the logo. 6
words from me on this topic: Gold Coast United, freedom of speech. Got it framed at home, not yet hung on the wall. But no, that'll be good for Unite Round. They've got, a year on, they've had time to plan Unite Round. The fan zone sounds like it's going to be pretty fun.
Yep.
Max Rushton's going to be there with a Soccer AM style sort of top bins challenge. So
good vibes.
Looking forward to spending a bit of time around there.
Yep.
Tommy, what would you recommend interstate fans do while they're in Sydney to have a true Sydney experience?
It's supposed to be good weather in Sydney this weekend. So, I mean, obviously the beaches, Bondi Beach, Centennial Park, Paddington, Oxford Street. The world's your oyster. Sydney's got so many great things, but, I feel like, in and around the stadium and Paddington and Oxford Street, I feel like that might be a good vibe this weekend.
A little bit far away from the stadiums, but 3 letters from me: Marrickville pork roll. Tommy, after Robbie Hooker just ripped out some one-armed push-ups, good luck to him that he can do it on the weekend to manage his anger. What's the best way you've seen a coach manage their anger in football?
Jose Mourinho would probably have the top 10 of... I'm not sure he's managing his anger, actually. So
not at all.
But, no, to be fair, that was quite unique. I'd never seen that before, so I don't really have another example of that.
The only thing I can contribute here is, and I hate to bring everything back to Gold Coast United, no I don't, but Miron Bleiberg never looked stressed, and that's because he was independently wealthy and he spent his mornings playing tennis and his afternoons playing golf. If you can't manage your anger doing that, then there's no help for you.
There you go.
What are football group chats really like, Tommy? And we asked this because Ariath Piol, it was revealed, is in a group chat with some of the other African boys who've come out of Adelaide, including Nestor Irankunda, Tete Yengi, a few others. What goes on in there?
They can be pretty funny, a lot of banter. I have seen a few instances because normally there's the players group chat and then there's the team group chat with the coaches and staff, and I have seen it a few times where players put something what they think is into the players group chat, but it's in the wrong group chat. And then it's just awkward. Do you delete it or you just own it? And it can be quite funny.
Yeah. Finally, Tommy, one of your former teammates, I think, Oliver Bozanic, has retired. 2013 champion with the Central Coast Mariners, 192 A-League games, went to a World Cup with Australia. I feel like he's just broadly underrated.
Big time. I played with him actually from when I was 15 in the Young Socceroos. So, he had a fantastic career, and as you just mentioned, flew under the radar, and I think he can be very proud of his career internationally and for the Socceroos and in the A-League. He was very consistent, always a very difficult opponent, and hopefully he stays involved in the game because, these are the people you want involved in the game.
Yeah. All right, very good, Tommy. We'll pull up stumps there. Thank you very much for your contribution. Get excited about Unite Round, guys. 6 games in Sydney for the men, 6 in women's. Just fill your boots, have fun, get around it, and we'll see you next week to talk all about it.